want to get to now is, what's the probability of my touching somebody at random that's a left-handed female? Assuming I'm blindfolded and everybody's uniformly mixed up, whatever. Well, I take the one distribution, which is 40% left-handers. I take the other distribution, which is 40% females, and I put those two distributions together, and what I get, of course, the probability of left-handed female is 40% times 40%, which is 16%. 0.4 times 0.4 is 0.16. In other words, the way I get the composite estimate is to multiply the probability distributions. That's all I'm trying to point out. Now, those of you that are sophisticated in advanced statistics say you should apply Bayes' theorem, which makes it just a little more rare. I'm going to spare you all that. This will be good enough for our purposes, trust me. Okay, the probability is technically even a little smaller, but let's go on. Well, now I have these 8 prophecies, born in Bethlehem, king of donkey, etc., these 8 prophecies. Since I've used powers of 10, it's easy to multiply them because all I have to do is count the zeros. This, in effect, the composite probability of these 8, of one person fulfilling these 8 prophecies is 1 chance in 10 to the 28th, 10 with 28 zeros after it. That's a pretty big number. But if you're going to be precise, you say, by the way, you should divide that by the total population during the last 2,000 years, whatever. And I'm going to say, I'm just going to stipulate that let's just use 100 billion as a horseback estimate. Okay? So I divide the 1028 by 10 to the 11th, and you just divide by subtracting exponents. That's 10 to the 17th. Now, if I was in a statistics class here, the way you try to get a feeling for, say, 1 chance in 100, we typically take a bucket. And let's say we put 100 silver dollars in there. I take one of the silver dollars, and I mark it with someone's lipstick or nail polish or something, and put it in there, and we mix it all up. 99 unmarked ones, 1 marked. We mix it all up. The chance of my reaching in there and getting the one we marked is 1 chance in 100. That's a way of conveying what we mean by saying 1 in 100. You with me? Well, here I've got a situation where I've got 10 to the 17th. So what I need to do is get a bucket and put 10 to the 17th silver dollars in there. That turns out to be a pretty big bucket. In fact, I need a bucket that'll have 10 to the 17th silver dollars, and what I need is the state of Texas. And I fill it with silver dollars, it'll turn out to be 2 feet deep. 10 to the 17th is a big number. The chance of one person fulfilling those 8 prophecies is equivalent to my marking one of those silver dollars in Texas 2 feet deep, mixing them up in such a way that it could be anywhere, reaching down blindfolded and picking up one and picking up the one that's marked is 1 chance in 10 to the 17th. That obviously is pretty unlikely. But I've only used 8 prophecies. I have 300 prophecies to choose from. So bear with me one more time. I have 300 to choose from. I've only used 8 so far. I'm going to pick another 8. Now, if I literally did that, if I went through my list and picked another 8, it would be hard for me to find any that are as likely as the ones I've used. In other words, the more I reach in the list, the more technical they become, the more specific they become, therefore the more rare they are, okay? But for this discussion, let's assume that the next 8 are no less likely than the first 8 I've used. That's a fiction, but it's against us, so to speak. You with me? They actually would be more rare, but that's okay. So, assuming there's no decrease in likelihoods, I have 10 to the 28th times 10 to the 28th, that's 10 to the 56th, but I've got to divide by the population again, 10 to the 11th. So now I have 10 to the 45th that I need to deal with. Okay, now I need a bucket that's going to carry 10 to the 45th, 10 with 45 zeros after it. That's a lot of silver dollars. You want to know how many silver dollars that really is? Well, it's 10 to the 45th silver dollars. If I take the earth and build a ball of silver dollars, that's 30 times the distance from the earth to the sun, I will have 10 to the 45th silver dollars. Okay? Now what I need to do is take one of those silver dollars, mark it with some whatever, and get someone to volunteer in a spacesuit and go wander around this ball of silver dollars in such a way there's an equal likelihood that the silver dollar could be anywhere, and he reaches in and picks one out. The chance that he picked the one we marked is 1 chance in 10 to the 45th. Did that seem a little unlikely? You betcha. Well, let's do it one more time, but instead of doubling, just to save time, let's triple it. We went from 8 to 16. Let's take 3 times 16, 48. We're going to take 48 prophecies. We have over 300 to choose from, so I haven't even scratched the surface here yet. And again, I'm going to indulge in this fiction that there's no decrease in likelihoods. I'm later going to show you a couple of these that are so bizarre, so precise, they alone, singularly, demonstrate the reality of Jesus Christ. But let's just stay with this model. I now have 10 to the 28th multiplied by itself 6 times. That turns out to be 10 to the 168th, but I'm going to divide that by 10 to the 11th, the population, so I have 10 to the 157th. Now I've got to build a model for you and I to imagine that's really big, really big. And silver dollars won't work because they're too big in the first place. So I've got to make a model consistent. The units I'm going to use are the smallest thing I can conceive of. What's the smallest thing you can imagine? An atom. Okay, good. I'm going to make a ball of every atom in our galaxy. Turns out that's about 10 to the 66th. That's been estimated. I'm a long way from 10 to the 157th, so I'm going to make such a ball of every atom in the universe. I'm going to make such a ball for each atom in the universe. So now I've got 10 to the 66 times 10 to the 66, that's 10 to the 132nd. I'm still a long way from my goal. So I'm going to repeat this mental exercise once every second since the universe began. And that's commonly accepted as 10 to the 17th seconds. Are you kidding? No. You take 10 to 15 billion, you take 15 billion years, run out the arithmetic, and you'll find out that's roughly 10 to the 17th seconds. So I'm going to make a ball of every atom in the universe for each atom in the universe. I'm going to do that little exercise once every second for the entire history of the universe. That brings me 10 to the 149th. I'm still a long way from trying to create a model for 10 to the 157th. I'm short by 100 million times short. Now I take an atom and mark it, and of course you follow the logic. And by the way, in this little exercise, we've only dealt with 48 out of 300 prophecies, documented in the Old Testament, fulfilled in the New. This is, of course, an excerpt from hour 13 of Learning the Bible in 24 hours. For those of you that have done that or are going into it, you'll recognize this being repeated in there. And in going through this list, by the way, I have not touched on the most amazing ones. The genealogy of Jesus Christ. We'll take a look at that next time, briefly. It contains some surprises that I think most people who read their Bible haven't discovered yet. We'll show you a few of those things. And we'll also explore a specific prediction. The angel Gabriel told Daniel 5 centuries in advance the exact day that their Messiah would ride that donkey into Jerusalem. And it's all in the Old Testament. We'll look at that. That one alone totally blows any attempt to mathematically predict its likelihood. We'll touch a little bit on the Midrashic prophecies before we're through. Because you see, this idea that prophecy is prediction and fulfillment, that's a Western model. The Apostle Paul was from the school of Gamaliel, who was taught by Hillel and what they call the Midrash, that prophecy is pattern, not just prediction. And when we begin to understand the Bible in terms of its patterns, we get insights that are absolutely breathtaking, that apply to us in our present day. We'll talk about that before the series is over. Well, what's our agenda? We've gone through this here a little bit. This first session has been an introduction. We've talked about the nature of time. That time itself is a physical property that only God himself can transcend. And he alone knows the end from the beginning, and he lays that out in writing to prove that he is God and that he cares. We've also indulged in some speculations that have been borrowed heavily from the famous writings of Peter Stoner many years ago, this little model of the probabilities, the 8 prophecies. It's not original, it's something we've adapted from some famous work that's been done. But it gives us at least a grasp that the conjunction of these prophecies in a particular person go beyond any ability to attribute it to coincidence or chance or even contrivance. So that's the first session we've completed. Now, in our next session, we're going to talk about prophecy past. We'll look at other proofs of history. And it'll be startling to realize not only the Bible predicts the things that have happened throughout history, but the precision by which it does is absolutely breathtaking and missed by many scholars. In our third session, we'll talk about the end time scenario.